afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Of the Vermont names we all know, like Bernie Sanders, Calvin Coolidge, and of course Ben and Jerry's, one name, Ethan Allen, stands out. Allen is synonymous with Vermont's earliest days before Vermont was Vermont. And although we have many likenesses of Allen, none of these, as we'll learn today, are Ethan Allen, not really. The Ethan Allen Homestead is a real place, and it is staffed by a dedicated team of volunteers, and they're all led by our guest today. I would like to welcome Angie Grove, the executive director of the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And let's just jump right in. Can you tell me about the Ethan Allen Homestead and what people can expect if they go to visit?
Yeah, so the Ethan Allen Homestead Park is about 300 acres. It's owned by the Winooski Valley Park District. And the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum, we are a small nonprofit museum that partners with the park to run the historic preservation, education, and interpretation for the site.
And what do you folks have to offer? What could I see if I stop by?
Yeah, so we are open for the general admission 6 months of the year, May 1st through October 31st, and we offer guided tours. We have exhibits, educational films, and an 18th century garden, and of course the historic Allen House, which is the oldest still standing building in the city of Burlington.
And is it preserved like it was when he was there?
In the 1980s, they did a restoration, and the historians at the time preserved it to what they believed was its original appearance. There have been some contentions amongst historic preservationists about some of their interpretations. For example, in the early 2000s, another preservationist thinks that they put the parlor and the kitchen on the wrong sides of the house. And another interpretation that suggests there might have even been a smaller footprint of an earlier house from the people who were building the house who lived in it before they extended it to the size we have today. But otherwise, yes.
Absolutely. It's always interesting to have historical discourse about stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people think history is set in stone, but we're always learning new things and figuring out how it really was, especially with the increase in technology today that helps us use science to figure out history.
Sure. And you said you're open 6 months out of the year. What are your hours of operations?
So May 1st, we open the doors at 10 a.m. We close every day at 4 p.m., and that happens until Halloween, and before we close the doors for the winter season. But even during the winter, we're not completely closed. We still do private groups. We do field trips. We have special events. Our monthly lecture series goes year-round, for example. So people can still email us to book a private tour or a field trip or other event.
And how many people do you usually see a year?
We have about 6,000 visitors who walk through the doors for the various programs throughout the year.
That's incredible. And you mentioned before you're part of the Winooski Parks District, I believe. You work with them. Can you tell me about the other things they offer on the property?
Yeah, so other than the museum, the Park District partners with a lot of other community organizations. It's really amazing that this site is not just this historic relic, but a living, breathing community center. So there are community garden groups there, including New Farms for New Americans, and that group is actually farming the same land that the Allen family was farming in the 18th century, which we know was actually farmed about 700 years, even earlier than that, by Abanaki peoples. So it's really great that the site is still being actively used in the same way it's been used for 700 years.
Wow, that's a lot of history for that. And you also mentioned the Abanaki people. And the homestead kind of collaborated with the Abanaki, is that right?
Yeah, so the mission of the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum is to bring to life the history of all eras of human occupation on that site. And that includes the Abanaki people, that includes the British colonists, and that includes the immigrant farmers of the 19th century and the industrial farmers of the 20th century, all the way up to today.
And do you still work with the Abanaki people in the creation of the museum?
Yes, so we currently have 2 exhibits on display this season. One is by an organization called Alnobaiwi, which is a nonprofit Abanaki cultural organization who actually have their offices on site, so we partner very closely with them. And that exhibit was put up last year, and it will remain up through this season, so through October. It's called the Abanaki, Vermont's First People. And actually, this season only, we have another exhibit by the Vermont Abanaki Artists Association, another nonprofit Abanaki cultural group. And that's called Nebizon Water is Life, and that's just going to be up for this season.
But a lot of stuff to see this year about the Abanaki people.
Absolutely. And then in addition to those exhibits, which are temporary exhibits, we also have the Abanaki Village, which is a permanent outdoor exhibit, which is also managed by Alno-Biwi.
And Ethan Allen, of course, is seen a lot with the Green Mountain Boys and a lot of depictions like that, but he never actually sat for a portrait. Can you tell me a little bit about this man of mystery and how he's connected to Burlington?
Yeah, while Ethan Allen was alive, he never had a portrait done. This really was the frontier, and so there weren't a lot of artists up in what is now Vermont at the time. But there is one quote that historians have been able to find from someone describing his physical appearance while he was alive, and all they said is that he was tall and red-faced. We also have indications that his brothers were tall as well, so we're talking well into 6-foot territory, though we don't know exactly how tall. And then, in addition to that, about 60 years after Ethan died, there was an artist who was commissioned to build a statue, and he interviewed 3 of Ethan Allen's acquaintances who told him what Ethan Allen looked like, but this was still 60 years after he had died. And the only other clue we have is Ethan's daughter Lucy, who had a son who she also named Ethan Allen Hitchcock, and Lucy always said that her son very much resembled her father. We do have photographs of Ethan Allen Hitchcock. Those are the clues we have as to what Ethan Allen actually looked like, but he never had a portrait done while he was alive.
So tall and a little bit sunburned, maybe.
Maybe a little bit sunburned, maybe had a little bit too much rum.
Okay, you choose your story.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about his connection to Burlington?
Yeah, so Ethan Allen chose this site as his retirement home, basically. So him and his brothers and one of his cousins formed a land speculation company called the Onion River Land Company, and they purchased properties from the New Hampshire governor, because New Hampshire claimed this land. And then the New York governor came in to claim this land, and the King of England sided with New York. So the Onion River Land Company's interests were very much threatened by New York's presence in the area, and that is where we get the Green Mountain Boys, who formed to fight off New York's claims to this land. But the Onion River Land Company had land up and down the Winooski River, and out of his tens of thousands of acres that Ethan Allen owned throughout Vermont, Burlington, right on the Winooski River, was his most choice piece of land, and this is where he moved to retire after the Revolutionary War.
And volunteerism is how you guys operate largely, and you were telling me before this started you're the only full-time staff member that the museum has. Can you tell me about the volunteer program?
Yeah, so we're actually quite a small nonprofit when it comes to personnel. I'm the only full-time staff person. I do have a seasonal staff person to run the museum during the summer as well. And actually this year we just hired a lead educator to run our field trip programming, because that has greatly increased since COVID restrictions have gone down. But otherwise, it's a team of volunteers who do everything else. They give the tours, they manage our artifact collection, they work on our archaeological research projects that we're doing, and they staff the front desk, they purchase the gift shop inventory. We really rely on our volunteers to run everything. Every month while we're open, our volunteers donate over 500 hours per month. And in the winter time, they still donate about 200 hours per month to keep things running.
How can people get involved if they'd like to volunteer?
We will really hope to have more volunteers. Even though I just gave really big numbers, there's still a lot of need, because we are open 7 days a week during the summer months. And so people can email us at ethanallenhomestead@gmail.com. They can call us, they can go to our website, and there'll be a list of volunteer projects on our website if they want to get involved. In addition to volunteering, we also take monetary donations as well as artifact donations if you have something of Vermont heritage, particularly 18th century, that might be a good fit for our story and our interpretation.
And a lot of Ethan Allen's history is tied to his wife, Fanny Allen. Can you tell me a little bit about how she's commemorated in the museum?
Absolutely. So Fanny Allen actually lived on this site a lot longer than her husband, Ethan. Ethan died at the Ethan Allen Homestead. He died here in Burlington after only about 2 years of living on the site. But Fanny lived here off and on for almost 10 years. And she gave birth to multiple children in this house, and she actually lived here with her next husband after Ethan, also Jabez Pennyman. And one of the things that we've been working on, and we're very excited to premiere this summer, is a short documentary film about Fanny's life. and how her life is an example for the contributions of women during the 18th century to the formation of Vermont, to the formation of the United States.
And you guys, the main event is the museum, so to speak. Can you tell me about some of the artifacts you have in there?
Absolutely. So we had an archaeological dig done at the museum in the 1990s, and we have over 10,000 artifacts from those digs. And so we have an exhibit up about that, but we also have a project that we're working on behind the scenes right now, because the majority of those artifacts are just in storage up in the attic and haven't really been cared for properly over the last couple of decades. So we're realizing that this needs intervention now, particularly because the attic is starting to leak. And so we have a group of volunteers who are working on sorting and inventorying the artifacts, other volunteers who've been doing digitization for the catalog for the artifacts, and soon we're going to be hiring an archaeologist to write up the research reports that never got finished in the 1990s. This way we'll be able to use the artifacts much better for exhibition, as well as offer them up for researchers to have better access to.
And before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you folks?
Email us at ethanallenhomestead@gmail.com or visit our website, www.ethanallenhomestead.org.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
That wraps up another edition of Across the Fence. My thanks to everyone behind the scenes here at WCAX for making today's program a success. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.